The massive space station called Eternal Harmony floated in the darkness between stars like a giant metal city. Inside its gleaming corridors walked creatures from 12 different worlds, each one believing they were superior to all others. Ambassador Zefkar moved through the halls with the confidence of someone who had never lost a negotiation. His blue skin shimmered under the artificial lights as he reviewed the documents on his tablet. "Another primitive species wants to join us," he said to his aide, shaking his head. "These humans have barely learned to travel faster than light, and already they think they deserve a seat at our table." Captain John Blake stood on the bridge of his ship, the New Dawn, as it approached the massive station. He wore a simple blue uniform with small metal badges on his chest. Behind him stood Lisa Martinez, a young woman with dark hair who handled all communications, and Kevin Walsh, a tall man with serious eyes who was in charge of security. "They're scanning us again," Lisa said, watching her screens. "That's the 5th time since we arrived." Kevin crossed his arms and frowned. "They want us to know we're not welcome here." John nodded but kept his voice calm. "We knew this wouldn't be easy. Earth needs what they have, and we're going to get it the right way." The New Dawn was much smaller than the alien ships surrounding the station. Its white hull looked plain compared to the colorful, exotic designs of the other vessels. To any observer, it seemed like nothing more than an exploration ship built by a young civilization still learning about space travel. As they docked with the station, John straightened his uniform and checked his appearance one final time. "Remember, we're here as equals even if they don't see it that way yet." The airlock opened with a soft hiss, and the 3 humans stepped into a world unlike anything on Earth. The corridor stretched far in both directions, with walls that seemed to glow with their own light. Strange symbols floated in the air, shifting and changing as they watched. Creatures they had only seen in pictures walked past them without a second glance. A tall, thin being with silver skin and 4 arms approached them. "I am Guide Valtar. You will follow me to the council chambers. Do not touch anything and do not speak unless spoken to." The guide led them through winding passages that seemed designed to impress and intimidate visitors. Windows showed the vast emptiness of space filled with ships from dozens of worlds. Gardens grew impossible plants that moved without wind. Fountains flowed with liquids that glowed like liquid starlight. "Impressive," Lisa whispered. "It's meant to be," Kevin replied quietly. They entered a circular chamber with seats arranged in tiers around a central platform. 12 beings sat in chairs that seemed to float in the air, each one representing a different species. At the center sat Counselor Vexthal of the crystalline hegemony, his body appearing to be made of living diamond that reflected light in rainbow patterns. "So these are the humans," Vexthal said, his voice echoing strangely in the chamber. "They look even more primitive than their pictures suggested." High Scholar Quendel of the Zephyrian Alliance leaned forward in her chair. Her body was covered in what looked like flowing water that never fell. "Their ship barely registers on our sensors. How did such a weak species even achieve space travel?" Ambassador Zethkar gestured toward the humans with one of his long arms. "They wish to join our confederation. They claim to offer something of value in exchange for membership." John stepped forward onto the platform. Around him, holographic displays showed images of Earth, human cities, and their small fleet of starships. To the assembled aliens, it all looked hopelessly backward. "We come seeking friendship and trade," John said, his voice carrying clearly through the chamber. "Humanity offers our knowledge, our resources, and our commitment to peace." Several of the counselors made sounds that might have been laughter. Vexel's crystalline body flashed with different colors as he spoke. "Your knowledge? We mastered science while your species was still learning to make fire, your resources. Your entire world couldn't power one of our city ships for a day. Perhaps they could serve as laborers," suggested Quindle. "They seem sturdy enough for basic work." John felt his jaw tighten but kept his expression neutral. Behind him, he could sense Kevin's anger and Lisa's frustration, but they remained silent and professional. Zethkar raised a hand for silence. "We are not cruel. We understand that young species need guidance." We offer humanity a probationary period. You will serve the Confederation in various capacities. If you prove useful, perhaps in time you may earn limited membership rights. What kind of service? John asked. Whatever we require, Vexthal answered with finality. Mining, farming, construction, research assistance. You will go where we send you and do what we tell you to do. John looked around the chamber at the 12 faces staring down at him with mixtures of boredom and amusement. None of them saw humans as threats or equals. They were simply another primitive species to be managed and used. And in return? John asked. Medical technology, Zethkar said. We know your world suffers from a plague our science can easily cure. Serve us well, and your people will live. John was quiet for a long moment. On Earth, millions were dying from a disease that human medicine couldn't stop. These beings could save them all with treatments they probably considered basic. The price was humanity's pride and freedom, at least for now. We accept your terms, John said finally. The council members nodded, already losing interest in the small drama before them. They had gained another servant species and solved a minor problem. As far as they were concerned, the humans were now just another resource to be managed. As they left the chamber, none of the aliens noticed the look that passed between John and his companions. It was a look that spoke of patience, determination, and something else. Something that might have given them pause if they had bothered to pay attention to the species they had just dismissed as primitive and harmless. 3 months had passed since humanity accepted the Galactic Council's terms, and the reality of their situation had become clear across dozens of human settlements. On the mining world of Kepler 442b, the red sun cast everything in shades of rust and shadow. Steve Patterson wiped sweat from his forehead as he watched his crew haul heavy containers of rare minerals from the deep tunnels. The Thoraxian overseers stood nearby, their insect-like bodies clicking and buzzing as they communicated. In their own language, Commander Threx Volume pointed one of his 4 clawed arms at the human workers and made harsh sounds that everyone understood meant faster. We've been at this for 14 hours straight, said Jake Murphy, a young miner whose hands were raw from handling the cutting tools. Even the machines need rest. Patterson looked at the alien commander and then back at his exhausted crew. These were good people who had volunteered to help their species earn a place in the galaxy. They deserved better than this treatment, but complaining would only make things worse. Take a 5-minute break, Patterson called out. Drink some water and check your equipment. Threx Volume immediately began clicking angrily and approached Patterson with aggressive movements. The alien stood nearly 8 feet tall, and his exoskeleton gleamed with natural armor that could stop most weapons. No breaks, the translator device on Threxval S-belt said in mechanical English. Humans work until quota is met. My people are exhausted, Patterson replied calmly. Tired workers make mistakes, and mistakes cause accidents. The Thoraxian commander made a sound like metal scraping against metal. Humans are replaceable, quota is not. On another world called New Eden, Amy Chen knelt in the fertile soil examining the crops that fed both humans and aliens across this sector of space. The planet's 2 suns provided perfect growing conditions, and the human colonists had turned vast areas into productive farms using techniques learned over centuries on Earth. Rick Johnson walked between the rows of grain, checking each plant with the care of someone who had been farming his whole life. The crops were healthy and growing well, but the quotas demanded by their Aquatic Dominion supervisors seemed to increase every week. They want 40% more grain this harvest, Amy said, looking up from her soil samples. There's no way we can produce that much without damaging the land. Rick shook his head as he examined a particularly strong plant. My grandfather always said that if you push the earth too hard, it pushes back eventually. Near the processing facility, Supervisor Glubmar floated in his mobile water tank, his tentacles moving constantly as he reviewed production reports. The aquatic being had never grown anything in his life, but he had been put in charge of all agricultural operations on New Eden. Humans work too slowly, he announced through his translation device. Other species produce more with less effort. Other species don't care if they destroy the soil, Amy replied, trying to keep her voice respectful. We're trying to build something that will last. Your job is to produce food, not to think about the future, Glubmar said dismissively. Increase production or face consequences. High above both worlds, on the research station orbiting Proxima Centauri, Dr. Helen Foster stared at her latest calculations with growing frustration. For weeks, she and her team had been working on a breakthrough in quantum energy transmission, something that could revolutionize space travel for every species in the galaxy. Paul Williams looked up from his engineering console where he had been designing the hardware needed to test their theories. The math works perfectly. If we can build this prototype, we'll prove that instant energy transfer across vast distances is possible. The laboratory door opened and 3 alien scientists entered. Dr. Kex Harrell of the Mentalist Collective moved with the fluid grace of his crystalline species, while research leader Vornthuk's metallic body clicked with each step. Behind them came assistant scholar Yilvera, whose gaseous form shifted constantly within her containment suit. Show us your progress, Dr. Kex Harrell commanded, his mental abilities allowing him to communicate without speaking. Helen activated the holographic display showing their theoretical framework and preliminary designs. The alien scientists studied the information with growing interest, occasionally making notes on their own devices. Interesting work, Vornthuk said after several minutes. We will take these findings to the Council for proper development. Wait, Paul said, stepping forward. This is our research. We're not finished with it yet. Humans are assistants, Yilvera's voice whispered from her suit. You gather data, we create knowledge. But we solve the fundamental equations, Helen protested. The breakthrough came from human insights into quantum mechanics. Dr. Kex Harrell's mind touched hers briefly, and she felt a cold amusement at her objection. Primitive species often stumble upon useful observations. Real scientists turn those accidents into actual discoveries. The aliens began downloading all the research data to their own systems. Within minutes, weeks of human work would be credited to alien researchers and presented to the galaxy as another example of superior alien intellect on the mining world. The situation grew worse when Threx Volume ordered the human workers into a section of the mine that Patterson knew was unstable. The rock formations showed clear signs of stress, and several support beams had developed concerning cracks. This area isn't safe, Patterson said, blocking the entrance tunnel with his body. Give us time to reinforce the supports and we can work here safely. Humans will work where they are told, Threx Volume replied. Safety is not your concern. Safety is everyone's concern, Patterson shot back, his patience finally wearing thin. Those rocks could come down on anyone who goes in there. The Thoraxian commander's mandibles clicked ominously. Perhaps humans need reminder of their place. Threx Volume activated a communication device and spoke in his own language. Within minutes, a message was transmitted to every human settlement in the sector. The medical supplies that Earth desperately needed would be delayed by another month unless the mining quotas were met immediately. Patterson felt his heart sink as he thought about the people dying on Earth while he argued about safety procedures with an alien who saw human lives as numbers on a report. His crew looked to him for leadership, but what choice did he really have? On New Eden, Amy received the same message and felt the same crushing weight of responsibility. The families in her colony depended on her to make the right decisions. But every choice seemed to lead to more suffering. Dr. Foster read the message on her research station and realized that human intelligence and innovation were being stolen while their people were threatened with death if they complained about the theft across human space. Similar scenes played out as colonists, workers, scientists, and farmers all faced the same terrible choice. They could accept abuse and exploitation in hopes of eventually earning respect, or they could resist and watch their homeworld suffer the consequences. None of the aliens bothered to consider what they were building with their casual cruelty. They saw humans as a useful but unremarkable species that could be managed through simple threats and intimidation. They never wondered what might happen if humanity's patience finally ran out. In his private quarters aboard the New Dawn, Captain John Blake read reports from every human settlement and felt something cold and hard forming in his chest. He had accepted the aliens' terms to save lives on Earth, but those same lives were now being used as weapons against human dignity and freedom. He opened a secure communication channel and began composing a message that would be sent to every human commander in the galaxy. The message was short and simple, but every person who received it would understand exactly what it meant. The time for patience and diplomacy was running out, and when it ended, the galaxy would learn something new about the species they had dismissed as primitive and harmless. The crisis that would change everything began on a Tuesday morning on the human colony world of Tau Ceti Colony. Administrator Janet Miller stood in her office watching the sunrise paint the sky in shades of orange and gold. Outside her window, 50,000 people were beginning another day in the city. They had built from nothing on this distant world. The communication alert that shattered the peaceful morning came directly from the Zephyrian Alliance. Commander Fluxstar's image appeared on the main screen, his flowing water-like body constantly shifting as he delivered his message with casual indifference. Human settlement designated Tau Ceti Colony must be evacuated within 48 hours, Fluxstar announced. This location has been selected for industrial development by the Zephyrian Manufacturing Consortium. Janet stared at the alien commander in disbelief. You want us to evacuate 50,000 people in 2 days? That's impossible. We need at least 2 weeks to organize transportation and temporary housing. Your timeline concerns are irrelevant, Fluxstar replied. Evacuation must be completed within stated timeframe or humans will be removed by other means. Tony Rodriguez, the colony's construction chief, stepped forward from where he had been reviewing building plans. We've spent 5 years building this city. These people have homes, jobs, families here. You can't just throw them out like garbage. The Zephyrian commander's form rippled with what might have been amusement. Humans built temporary structures on land that was always intended for proper development. Relocation is a privilege, not a right. Janet felt her hands clench into fists but forced herself to remain calm. What about our medical facilities? We have people in critical care who can't be moved safely. Acceptable casualties for necessary progress, Fluxstar said dismissively. Evacuation timeline remains unchanged. The communication ended, leaving Janet and Tony staring at a blank screen. Around them, other colony officials who had heard the exchange stood in stunned silence. 48 hours, Tony said quietly. They know we can't do it. They want us to fail so they can use force. Janet activated the colony-wide communication system. All department heads to the administration center immediately. We have an emergency situation. Within an hour, the colony's leadership had gathered in the main conference room. Dr. Nancy Brooks from the medical center looked pale as she delivered her report. We have 300 patients who cannot be safely moved without proper medical transport, she said. 40 of them are children in intensive care. Moving them in standard evacuation shuttles could kill them. Transportation Coordinator Gary Wilson shook his head as he reviewed shipping schedules. Even if we called in every available ship in the sector, we couldn't move 50,000 people and their belongings in 2 days. The logistics alone would take weeks to arrange. They don't care about logistics, Janet said grimly. They want this land and they're using us as an excuse to take it by force. Across the galaxy, similar scenes were playing out as the Galactic Council's member species grew bolder in their treatment of humanity. On the mining world, Commander Threxvolume decided to make an example of human workers who continued to question safety protocols. Steve Patterson watched in horror as Thraxian guards surrounded 3 of his best miners. Jake Murphy, who had complained about working conditions, stood with 2 other men who had supported him. These humans have shown repeated insubordination, Threxvolume announced to the assembled workers. Punishment will demonstrate consequences of defying proper authority. They were just asking for basic safety equipment, Patterson said, stepping forward. That's not insubordination, that's common sense. The Thoraxian commander's mandibles clicked ominously. Humans do not determine what is common sense. Humans follow orders or face consequences. What happened next was broadcast across the alien communication networks as a warning to other probationary species. The 3 human miners were executed publicly while their fellow workers were forced to watch. The alien authorities presented it as justice for rebellion, but every human who saw the broadcast understood it for what it really was: murder on Earth. Admiral Susan Brooks sat in the command center of the Human Defense Fleet reviewing reports that painted an increasingly dark picture. Every human settlement was reporting escalating abuse, impossible demands, and threats that grew worse each day. Dr. Carl Thompson, Earth's chief medical researcher, entered the command center carrying a tablet filled with disturbing data. The aliens are withholding medical supplies again. They're using the plague victims as hostages to force compliance from our colonies. How many people are dying because of their games? Admiral Brooks asked. Too many, Carl replied quietly. The treatments they promised could save millions, but they only deliver enough to keep us desperate for more. Communications Officer Betty Davis looked up from her station with a grim expression. We're receiving reports from Tau Ceti colony. The Zephyrians are demanding complete evacuation in 48 hours. Admiral Brooks felt something cold settle in her stomach. What's the colony's response? They're trying to negotiate, but the aliens won't listen. They've cut power to the medical facilities as a motivational demonstration. The power cut at Tau Ceti colony happened without warning. One moment the hospitals were running normally, and the next moment life support systems shut down across the medical complex. In the children's intensive care unit, alarms began sounding as critical equipment went offline. Dr. Brooks rushed through the darkened corridors with her emergency team, their flashlights cutting through the darkness as they tried to maintain life support manually for their most vulnerable patients. Emergency power should have kicked in, Nurse Linda Taylor said as she manually operated a ventilator for a young patient. They disabled everything, Dr. Brooks replied grimly. This isn't about evacuation anymore. This is about breaking us. Outside the hospital, Janet Miller stood watching the city she had helped build disappear into darkness. The aliens had made their message clear. Submit completely or watch people die. Captain John Blake received the news about Tau Ceti colony while he was aboard the space station Eternal Harmony, still officially serving as humanity's diplomatic representative. He watched the footage of darkened hospitals and dying patients with growing fury. The alien counselors discussed the situation as if it were a minor administrative issue. Ambassador Zethkar barely looked up from his reports as he commented on the unfortunate but necessary measures being taken to ensure human compliance. Perhaps this will teach them proper respect, Counselor Vexthal said, his crystalline body flickering with satisfied colors. Young species must learn their place through experience. John Blake stood slowly from his observer's chair. For months, he had watched his species be abused, exploited, and murdered while maintaining diplomatic protocol. He had accepted insults, threats, and condescension in hopes that patience would eventually lead to respect. That hope died as he watched footage of human children struggling to breathe in darkened hospitals while alien leaders discussed it as a teaching moment. John activated his personal communicator and sent a message using an old military code that every human commander in the fleet would recognize immediately. The message was just 4 words long, but it would change everything. The gloves come off. Across human space, leaders who had been waiting for this signal began activating plans that had been prepared in secret. Since humanity's first contact with the galactic community, the aliens had seen humans as primitive and peaceful, perfect subjects for domination and exploitation. They were about to learn that there was a difference between choosing peace and being incapable of war. Humanity had chosen to give diplomacy a chance, but that choice was about to end. The galaxy was about to discover what happened when you pushed a patient species too far, and the lesson would be written in the stars for everyone to see. The transformation began at exactly midnight, coordinated across dozens of human settlements spanning half the galaxy. Admiral Susan Brooks stood in the command center on Earth watching as reports flooded in from every human colony, and what she saw would have been impossible to believe just hours earlier. On the mining world of Kepler 442b, Steve Patterson emerged from the deep tunnels not as a simple foreman but as Colonel Patterson, former commander of Earth's Special Engineering Corps. Behind him came men and women, who had supposedly been miners and technicians. Now moving with the precision of trained soldiers, the Thoraxian guards had been expecting broken humans cowering after the public executions. Instead, they found themselves facing a coordinated military force that had been hiding in plain sight for months. Kevin Walsh, who had supposedly been transferred from diplomatic duty to help with mining operations, stepped out of the shadows wearing combat armor that had been concealed in maintenance tunnels. "Attention Thoraxian personnel," Patterson announced, over the facility's communication system. "You are now prisoners of war. Surrender immediately and you will be treated according to galactic conventions. Resist and face the consequences." Commander Threx Volume clicked his mandibles in fury and reached for his weapon, but found himself staring down the barrel of an energy rifle held by Jake Murphy, the young miner who had supposedly been weak and compliant. "I wouldn't," Jake said quietly. "You murdered my friends. Give me a reason." The mining facility that had been producing ore for alien factories was transformed into a military base within hours. Equipment that had seemed primitive revealed hidden capabilities, and storage areas opened to reveal weapons and supplies that shouldn't have existed on the agricultural world of New Eden. Rick Johnson stood in his fields as the sun rose, but he was no longer just a farmer. The irrigation systems throughout the colony activated, but instead of water, they deployed defensive barriers and communication networks that had been disguised as agricultural equipment. Amy Chun watched from the research station as holographic displays showed the true purpose of their crop rotation patterns. What had appeared to be simple farming had actually been the construction of a planetary defense grid, with each field serving as a sensor node and defensive position. Supervisor Glubmar's water tank was surrounded by humans who no longer showed him any respect or fear. The aquatic being found himself looking at colony administrator Janet Miller, who had somehow appeared on New Eden overnight. "You evacuated your people from Tau Ceti very quickly," Glubmar said, trying to maintain his authority. "We didn't evacuate anyone," Janet replied with a cold smile. "We relocated our military assets to positions where they could be more effective." The truth was becoming clear to alien commanders across human space. The colonies they thought they controlled had been military installations in disguise. The workers they had abused were trained soldiers, playing roles until they received orders to stop pretending. On the research station orbiting Proxima Centauri, Dr. Helen Foster finally showed her alien colleagues what human science could really accomplish. The quantum energy transmission project they had tried to steal revealed itself as just one small part of a communication network that spanned the entire galaxy. "Impossible," Dr. Kex Harrell said as his mental abilities detected the vast scope of the hidden network. "Your species lacks the knowledge to create such technology." Paul Williams activated systems that had been built into the station's infrastructure from the beginning. "You assumed we lacked knowledge because we didn't show off like you do. That was your first mistake." The research station that had seemed like a minor outpost transformed into a central hub controlling defensive systems, communication arrays, and weapons platforms that had been hidden throughout the sector. The aliens who had been so confident in their superiority found themselves trapped on a station, controlled by the primitive species they had been exploiting. The most shocking revelation came when Captain John Blake finally revealed the true nature of his diplomatic vessel. The New Dawn had seemed like a simple exploration ship, barely worthy of notice among the grand vessels of the Galactic Council. As Zephyrian warships approached the space station, expecting to intimidate the human representative, Blake's ship began to unfold. Hidden armor plating extended from the hull, weapon systems emerged from concealed bays, and defensive shields flickered to life around a vessel that was suddenly 3 times its original size. This is impossible, Ambassador Zethkar said, as his sensors tried to make sense of what they were seeing. Your ship registered as having minimal combat capability. That's because you were seeing what we wanted you to see, Blake replied, his diplomatic mask finally falling away to reveal the military commander beneath. We've been at war since the day we met you. You just didn't know it yet. The New Dawn's transformation was just the beginning. Across human space, vessels that had seemed like simple cargo haulers and colony ships revealed their true nature as advanced warships. The human fleet that had appeared small and primitive suddenly numbered in the thousands, with capabilities that matched or exceeded anything the aliens possessed. On Tau Ceti colony, the population that should have been, evacuating instead turned their city into a fortress. Tony Rodriguez led construction crews that worked with inhuman speed and efficiency, transforming civilian buildings into defensive positions and communication centers, the colony's medical facilities, which had been shut down by the alien power cut, came back online using hidden generators that had been waiting for this moment. Dr. Nancy Brooks found herself coordinating not just with local medical staff but with military medics who had been disguised as colonists. Commander Fluxstar-S forces arrived to find not a helpless population ready for evacuation, but a fully operational military base protected by weapon systems that shouldn't have existed. This is not possible, Fluxstar transmitted to his superiors. Intelligence reports indicated minimal defensive capability. Your intelligence was wrong, Janet Miller replied over the communication channel. We've been preparing for this since the day we arrived. The pattern repeated across dozens of worlds as alien overseers discovered that their human subjects had been playing a much deeper game than anyone suspected. Mining operations revealed sophisticated military engineering, agricultural colonies showed defensive capabilities that defied belief, and research stations demonstrated technology that surpassed alien understanding. Admiral Brooks watched the reports coming in from across human space with grim satisfaction. Protocol Omega had been years in the planning, developed by military strategists who understood that humanity's first contact with alien civilizations might not go well. Every human who had volunteered for colonial service had been carefully selected and trained. Scientists were also intelligence officers, farmers were combat engineers, miners were special forces soldiers, and diplomats were military commanders. The aliens had seen what they expected to see, a primitive species suitable for exploitation. They had never looked deeper, never questioned why humans adapted so quickly to alien technology or why their colonies became so efficient so fast. Dr. Carl Thompson stood beside Admiral Brooks watching the tactical displays that showed human forces taking control of strategic positions across the galaxy. Think they're starting to understand what they've gotten themselves into? Not yet, Admiral Brooks replied. But they will. The transformation was so complete and so sudden that alien commanders found themselves questioning everything they thought they knew about warfare, intelligence, and the species they had dismissed as harmless primitives. Humanity had revealed itself not as a conquered race but as a military force that had been conducting the most successful intelligence operation in galactic history. For months, they had gathered information, mapped alien defenses, and positioned assets while appearing to be nothing more than compliant subjects. The galaxy was about to learn a lesson about underestimating opponents, and humanity was prepared to be very thorough teachers. The emergency session of the Galactic Council convened in chaos as reports flooded in from across the galaxy. The beings who had ruled space for millennia found themselves facing a situation they had never encountered before. A species they had dismissed as primitive was systematically defeating their most advanced military forces. Counselor Vexthal-S crystalline body flickered through colors of rage and confusion as he reviewed the tactical reports. This is impossible. Our intelligence showed humans possessed minimal combat capability. Our intelligence was wrong, Ambassador Zethkar replied grimly, studying footage from the mining world where Thoraxian forces had been overwhelmed in hours. The question now is how wrong we were about everything else. High Scholar Quendel floated in her chair, her water-like body rippling with agitation. 3 of our battle fleets have been destroyed or captured. How does a species that barely achieved faster-than-light travel possess such advanced weaponry? The answer came from the battlefield reports streaming in from human-controlled space. On the mining world, Colonel Patterson stood in the command center that had been disguised as a workers' cafeteria, coordinating defensive actions across the entire sector. Thoraxian reinforcements are approaching from the outer system. Jake Murphy reported from his position at the sensor station. 3 heavy cruisers and a battle carrier. Let them come, Patterson replied calmly. We've been waiting months to show them what we can really do. The Thoraxian battle group approached the mining world expecting to find scattered resistance and demoralized humans hiding in caves. Instead, they encountered a coordinated defense that demonstrated tactical thinking they hadn't believed humans capable of possessing. The mining facility revealed its true nature as weapons emplacements emerged from underground bunkers and defense satellites activated throughout the system. What had appeared to be simple asteroid mining equipment turned out to be disguised weapons platforms with firepower that matched capital ships. Commander Threx Volume, now a prisoner in his own facility, watched the battle unfold on screens controlled by his former victims. Your species was evaluated as incapable of such coordination. How did you hide this from our sensors? We didn't hide anything, Colonel Patterson answered without looking away from the tactical display. You saw exactly what you expected to see and never looked deeper. The Thoraxian battle group found itself outmaneuvered by an enemy that seemed to predict their every move. Human fighters emerged from concealed positions throughout the asteroid field, using mining tunnels as launch bays and ore processing stations as ammunition depots. In less than 6 hours, 3 Thoraxian cruisers had been destroyed and the battle carrier captured with most of its crew alive. The victory sent shockwaves through alien command structures that had considered Thoraxian military might to be among the finest in the galaxy. On New Eden, the agricultural paradise revealed defensive capabilities that defied every assumption about human military technology. Rick Johnson coordinated planetary defenses from a command bunker hidden beneath what had appeared to be a simple barn. Zephyrian fleet entering orbit, Amy Shun reported from her position at the sensor array, disguised as a weather monitoring station. 12 ships, including 2 dreadnoughts. All defensive positions report ready, Janet Miller added, her voice calm despite commanding the defense of 50,000 civilians against a force that should have been overwhelming, the Zephyrian. Commander, Admiral Kelthara, transmitted demands for immediate surrender, expecting the human colonists to collapse in terror at the sight of his overwhelming firepower. Instead, he received a response that changed his understanding of the species he was facing. "This is General Miller of the Human Colonial Defense Force," came the reply. "You are in violation of territorial sovereignty and are ordered to withdraw immediately." "General?" Admiral Kalthara replied in confusion. "Our intelligence indicated you were a colonial administrator with no military experience." "Your intelligence was incomplete," Miller responded. "Last chance to withdraw before we demonstrate why that was a mistake." The Zephyrian fleet had expected to bombard a defenseless agricultural world. Instead, they found themselves facing a planetary defense grid that had been built over years of careful preparation. Crop fields revealed themselves as sensor arrays, irrigation channels became defensive trenches, and farm buildings opened to reveal weapons that belonged on military starships. The battle for New Eden became a masterclass in defensive warfare. As the humans used every advantage of terrain and preparation to offset the aliens' superior numbers, Zephyrian ships found themselves caught in carefully planned crossfires, lured into trap zones by false sensor readings, and overwhelmed by coordinated strikes from positions they hadn't known existed. By the end of the day, Admiral Kelthara's fleet had been reduced to 5 damaged ships, limping away from a planet that had revealed itself as one of the most heavily fortified worlds in the sector. The research station orbiting Proxima Centauri became the center of the most shocking revelation of all. Dr. Helen Foster stood in the main laboratory, no longer hiding her true identity as Colonel Foster of Human Military Intelligence. as she explained to her alien colleagues exactly how thoroughly they had been deceived. "The quantum transmission project you tried to steal was real," she said to the captured alien scientists. "But it was also just one component of a communication network that spans the entire galaxy. Dr. Kexharel's mental abilities, which he had used to intimidate humans for months, now detected the vast scope of the deception. Impossible. Such a network would require resources your species doesn't possess." "We built it over 5 years," Paul Williams replied, activating holographic displays that showed the true extent of human preparations. "Every colony, every mining operation, every research station was connected from the beginning." The aliens found themselves prisoners on a station that had become the communications hub for human military operations across half the galaxy. The technology they had dismissed as primitive was coordinating simultaneous battles on dozens of worlds with precision that their own command structures couldn't match. The most devastating blow to alien confidence came when Admiral Brooks' fleet appeared at the edges of occupied space. Ships that had been dismissed as simple cargo haulers and colony vessels revealed themselves as advanced warships with capabilities that exceeded the best. Alien technology. The human battle fleet that emerged from hyperspace numbered not in the dozens, as alien intelligence had estimated, but in the thousands. Modular construction had allowed civilian ships to be rapidly converted to military configurations, while hidden shipyards had been producing warships disguised as industrial facilities. "This changes everything," Counselor Vextel said as he watched footage of human ships systematically destroying alien defensive positions. "We're not facing a primitive species. We're fighting a military power that may exceed our own capabilities." The realization that they had seriously underestimated humanity was compounded by reports of human behavior that confused and disturbed alien commanders. On worlds where humans had achieved total victory, they provided medical aid to wounded alien prisoners and maintained supply lines to alien civilian populations. Commander Threxvolume found himself receiving medical treatment from the same humans he had ordered executed just days before. The alien warrior's understanding of warfare didn't include concepts like mercy toward defeated enemies or protection of non-combatants. "Why do you treat our wounded?" he asked Dr. Nancy Brooks as she worked to repair damage from the battle. "Because they're wounded," she replied simply. "Politics and warfare don't change medical ethics." This combination of overwhelming military capability and unexpected moral consistency began to shake the foundations of alien understanding about what constituted strength and civilization. Admiral Kalthara, reviewing his defeat on New Eden, realized that the humans had possessed the firepower to destroy his entire fleet from the beginning of the battle, but had instead targeted engines and weapon systems to minimize casualties. "They could have killed us all," he reported to the Galactic Council. "They chose not to. I don't understand this species." As human victories accumulated across the galaxy, it became clear that humanity had not just hidden their military capabilities, but had fundamentally misunderstood the nature of their society. The aliens had expected primitive savages driven by revenge and hatred, but instead found disciplined military forces guided by principles they couldn't comprehend. The galaxy was learning that humanity's greatest strength was not their hidden technology or secret preparations, but their ability to maintain their moral code even when dealing with enemies who had shown them no mercy. The final confrontation came when the combined alien fleet surrounded Earth itself, a massive armada representing every species in the Galactic Council. The alien commanders believed that threatening humanity's home world would force immediate surrender, but they were about to discover the last and greatest miscalculation in their long chain of errors. Admiral Susan Brooks stood on the bridge of her flagship, watching the alien fleet take positions around Earth. Nearly 1,000 ships from 12 different species formed a blockade that should have been impossible to break. The aliens had brought enough firepower to crack planets, certain that such overwhelming force would end human resistance. Incoming transmission from the alien fleet. Communications Officer Betty Davis reported. The holographic display activated. to show Ambassador Zethkar flanked by military commanders from every council species. His blue skin seemed darker than usual as he delivered what he clearly expected to be humanity's final ultimatum. "Humans of Earth," Zethkar began, "your colonial rebellions have gone too far. Surrender immediately and return to your proper status, or watch your homeworld burn." Admiral Brooks smiled coldly as she activated her own transmission system. "Ambassador, you've made so many mistakes about humanity that I hardly know where to begin correcting them. But let me start with the biggest one." She gestured toward the view screen showing Earth floating peacefully in space, its blue and white surface unmarked by any visible defenses. To alien sensors, the planet appeared completely vulnerable. "You assume Earth is defenseless because you can't see any weapons," Brooks continued. "Just like you assumed our colonies were helpless because you couldn't see our soldiers. You really haven't learned anything, have you?" Captain John Blake's voice joined the conversation from his position aboard the New Dawn, which had somehow appeared among the alien fleet without being detected. "Perhaps it's time we gave them a proper demonstration of human engineering." What happened next would be studied in military academies across the galaxy for generations. The space around Earth, which had appeared empty to alien sensors, suddenly came alive with defensive platforms that had been hidden using technology the aliens hadn't known humans possessed, orbital stations that had seemed like simple research. Facilities revealed themselves as weapons platforms with firepower that dwarfed most alien battleships. The moon itself opened launch bays that had been carved into its surface over decades of secret preparation, releasing fighter squadrons that had been waiting for this moment. Most shocking of all were the defense satellites that materialized throughout Earth's orbital space, their stealth systems finally deactivating to reveal a network of defensive positions that made the planet virtually impregnable. "Impossible," whispered High Scholar Quindle as her ship's sensors tried to count the number of weapons now targeting the alien fleet. "We monitored Earth constantly. These installations should have been detected. You monitored what we let." "You see," Dr. Carl Thompson replied from the planet's surface, where he was coordinating the defensive network from a command center hidden beneath what had appeared to be a medical research facility. "Every sensor scan, every intelligence report, every diplomatic visit showed you exactly what we wanted you to believe. The alien fleet found itself in a tactical nightmare. They were surrounded by defensive positions they hadn't known existed, outnumbered by forces they couldn't have imagined, and facing technology that exceeded their own capabilities in ways they didn't understand. But the most devastating revelation was yet to come. As the alien commanders tried to process their impossible situation, they received a communication that changed everything they thought they knew about humanity. The transmission came not from Earth or the human fleet, but from every alien-controlled world simultaneously. On mining worlds, agricultural colonies, research stations, and industrial planets across the galaxy, human workers revealed that they had been in constant communication with Earth throughout their supposed captivity. Colonel Patterson's voice carried clearly from the mining world as he reported the capture of an entire Thoraxian battle fleet. General Miller's forces on New Eden announced the surrender of the Zephyrian Occupation Force. Dr. Foster's intelligence network provided real-time, tactical information about every alien position in space. The aliens realized they weren't facing a desperate last stand by a cornered species. They were surrounded, outmaneuvered, and completely outclassed by an enemy that had been several moves ahead from the very beginning. Counselor Vexthal's crystalline body cycled through colors of confusion and disbelief as the scope of human deception became clear. "How long have you been planning this?" "Since before we met you," Admiral Brooks replied. "Humanity learned long ago that first contact with alien species might not go well. We prepared for the possibility that we would encounter civilizations that saw us as inferior and disposable. The turning point came when a Zephyrian dreadnought suffered a catastrophic systems failure and began drifting toward Earth's gravity well. The ship's crew, including High Scholar Quindle herself, faced certain death as their life support systems collapsed. Without hesitation, human rescue vessels launched from the hidden orbital platforms, Dr. Helen Foster led a medical team that risked their lives to evacuate the aliens from their dying ship, working frantically to save beings who had dismissed them as primitive and expendable. As human medics treated wounded Zephyrians aboard a rescue vessel, Quindle found herself face to face with Paul Williams, the engineer she had dismissed as intellectually inferior just months before. "Why are you helping us?" she asked as he worked to stabilize her damaged life support suit. "We treated your species terribly." "Because you're hurt and we can help," Williams replied simply, his hands steady as he repaired equipment with techniques that surpassed anything in Zephyrian medical technology. "What you did doesn't change what's right." This simple act of mercy toward enemies who had shown no mercy in return created a ripple effect throughout the alien fleet. Commander after commander watched human forces demonstrate capabilities that exceeded their own while maintaining ethical standards that shamed their own behavior. Ambassador Zethkar found himself reevaluating everything he believed about civilization, strength, and superiority. The species he had dismissed as primitive had demonstrated military prowess that matched the best in the galaxy, technological innovation that exceeded alien achievements, and moral consistency that their own advanced civilizations had abandoned. The final negotiations took place not aboard an alien flagship, but in the conference room of Captain Blake's vessel, the New Dawn. The ship that had once seemed like a minor diplomatic craft now served as the flagship of a fleet that had proven itself equal to any force in the galaxy. The terms humanity offered were simple and non-negotiable. The medical technology that Earth needed would be provided immediately as a gesture of good faith between equals. The abusive treatment of human colonies would end, and all species would be free to withdraw from interactions they no longer desired. Most importantly, humanity would take its place as a full member of the Galactic Council, not as a probationary species seeking approval, but as an equal partner with the right to participate in all decisions affecting galactic civilization. "You could destroy us," Vexfil said quietly as he reviewed the treaty documents. "Your fleet has the capability to eliminate the Council's military forces." "Yes, we could," Admiral Brooks agreed. "But that would make us no better than you were. We prefer to earn respect through strength and maintain it through honor." The ceremony that formalized humanity's membership in the Galactic Council took place in space above Earth, with representatives from all species present to witness the signing of a treaty between equals. Captain Blake, now revealed as Admiral Blake, signed the document that established humanity as a full partner in galactic civilization. As alien delegations toured Earth's orbital defenses and met with human leaders who had guided their species through the crisis, a new understanding emerged throughout the galaxy. Strength came in many forms, and the quiet species that had seemed so easily dismissed possessed depths of capability, innovation, and moral courage that demanded nothing less than complete respect. The galaxy would remember the lesson humanity had taught them. True strength was not the ability to dominate others, but the wisdom to choose when and how to use power, and the character to maintain principles even when dealing with those who had abandoned their own. Years later, when alien military academies taught courses on the human war, they would focus not on the battles or the technology, but on the moment when a species revealed that their greatest weapon had always been their refusal to become like their enemies. No matter how badly they had been treated, humanity had not just earned their place among the stars. They had shown the galaxy what it meant to be truly civilized.